and welcome to Between the Rows. I'm Ed White, your host this week. Today we'll hear about how a threat to Canadian agricultural exports is spreading.
This is one of the very issues that they're most concerned about was Italy's country of origin labeling. They said it punishes Canadian exports, runs counter to the free trade agreement.
We'll hear about how sunflowers aren't just a symbol of Ukraine, but also a major crop in the suffering nation, and what that might mean for farmers here in Central North America.
Since the 24th of February, which is obviously the first day of the invasion, we've added about $4 a hundredweight to the price of sunflowers. So we're looking at about, right now, I'd say about a 15 to 20% increase in new crop prices in just the last 2 weeks.
And we'll hear about how the federal government is working with watershed organizations to increase farming sustainability and to reduce carbon emissions. But first, a word from our sponsor.
We knew we were doing something right when our competition started swearing every time they talked about us. Just the other day, I heard someone saying, "Have you seen this f***ing Seedmaster Ultra Pro 2? They got third-party PAMI testing that confirms its individual row metering delivers uniform f***ing seed placement, near zero seed mortality, and no impact on f***ing germination results." We take it as a huge f***ing compliment. Start raising your f***ing ROI at seedmaster.ca.
There's a lot of talk about farm sustainability and about reducing greenhouse gas emissions from farming. There's been talk. But to achieve more action, the federal government has turned to two organizations with grassroots connections to prairie farmers. The feds are channeling over $60 million through the Canola Council of Canada and through watersheds associations to reduce on-farm carbon emissions. Here I speak with Manitoba Association of Watersheds Executive Director, Linda Nicol, about the role watershed associations in Manitoba and Saskatchewan are playing.
You folks and the government have done quite a lot together. You seem to have quite a fruitful relationship, like things like living labs, and other things. What's behind that, and what are you able to do because of this, I guess, good working relationship you've got?
I think what's behind it is the strength of the Watershed District program in Manitoba. Ultimately, anything that MAW does is in service to the watershed districts, and what we have that's so unique within our district program here is localized governance that is really allowing them to respond to the needs of what's required in their area. They work so closely with the agriculture community. They're invested in making the watershed more efficient, looking to ensure that there is a strong supply of both good quality and quantity of water, and doing projects that protect not only that, but also soil health. And so the individual strength of the Watershed Districts program is really what results in any efforts that Manitoba Association of Watersheds is able to do. We can't say enough good about the work they're doing on the land.
Yeah, and those living labs projects, they're pretty neat. You've been out to them, I've been out.
Yes, they're very innovative.
You're all over them.
Yeah.
But they do some pretty neat work, and that must be good to see there being public support for stuff which people talk about but often never gets off the drawing room.
Absolutely. And anytime that we can talk about the good work that's being done on the land, we're happy to do so, because what we've really seen through the Living Labs project, it's a bit of a unique approach in that it combines research and real on-farm activity in real time. And so in the 3 years it's been running, we're in our final year with it now, we're really starting to see the results and the fruition of that work. We're able to acknowledge some of the changes that happened along the way, how we adapted in these challenging circumstances, not just with the drought last year, but the challenges around research related to COVID and how the distance was impacted. And still we're able to really deliver results from what work came out of those projects. And certainly having the opportunity to have Mr. Duguid acknowledge that is really exciting for us.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you. It's great chatting with you.
I then asked Terry Duguid, the Winnipeg Member of Parliament and Parliamentary Secretary with a long interest in water protection efforts, about why the federal government is working so closely with watershed associations.
I noticed that the government is doing a lot with the Manitoba Association of Watersheds.
Yes.
And the Living Labs project. Can you tell me about, I guess, why that has turned out to be such a fruitful relationship between the two of you?
Well, it's a $40 million investment, which is significant. You're absolutely right. And we in the prairies, I don't need to tell you, water is life. Water is agriculture. We either have too much or too little. We have Lake Winnipeg, which is increasingly becoming polluted. And how do you solve that problem? You solve it at the watershed level. By managing water at the watershed level, we can reduce flooding. We can reduce the impacts of drought. But also, we can better manage nutrients that are flowing into our waterways, eventually into Lake Winnipeg, causing algae blooms and wreaking havoc on the 11th largest freshwater body on Earth. So that's, the watershed is the fundamental unit at which we need to operate to get better environmental outcomes and better economic outcomes.
And the Living Labs program or projects have been a pretty interesting way of going about it. I've been out to quite a few myself, and they seem pretty organized and doing some pretty neat research. That is something I think you've been involved with for since their inception. What's your hope with those programs and where, I guess, the knowledge they develop can lead to?
Well, I think as their name implies, they are living labs. We are learning from them. We're learning about best management practices that can be applied to watersheds across the country, but particularly here on the prairies, we have very unique conditions. We get whipsawed between drought and floods, and also our soils store carbon, and we need those sinks. We need those reservoirs of carbon to stay in the ground, and so we're learning from folks like Living Labs, how to better manage our landscapes and waterscapes, both for environmental reasons, but also for economic reasons.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks.
Okay, good stuff.
Sunflowers are a symbol of Ukraine. Today, many Canadians are embracing sunflower images to show support for the beleaguered nation. In my own church, on Sunday in the sanctuary, we had sunflowers as part of that effort. But they are also a crucial export crop from Ukraine, the world's biggest exporter. Manitoba and the Dakotas are also significant producers of sunflower crops. I spoke with John Sambakken of the U.S. National Sunflower Association about how much growers here can fill in for sunflower seed that might be hard to get through the Black Sea. Does this create an opportunity for farmers here?
Well, I think it definitely does, especially with what's happening with 2022 new crop prices. Since the 24th of February, which is obviously the first day of the invasion, we've added about $4 a hundredweight to the price of sunflower. So we're looking at about, right now, I'd say about a 15 to 20% increase in new crop prices in just the last 2 weeks.
So what are they? Like, what are you seeing for new crop prices?
Right now, I can tell you, this is in obviously U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
We're right around, I'd say we're in a range of about $31 to $32 for oils.
For
hundredweight. That's where we're at. Per hundredweight, yes. Right.
So how does that compare to, other times?
Well, like last year at the same time, we're at $20 to $22. So obviously a pretty significant boost.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it.
Yeah.
And actually what's last year, that was a very good price.
Mm-hmm.
But now this year, this is even a more phenomenal price. And the thing with the situation with Ukraine, and this is where it's really key, is that given the volume they produce and the time of year that it is, the U.S. and Canada are in the prime position to fulfill some of this market demand. We're the only two other major producers, that can pick up some of the slack that's in the Northern Hemisphere. So,
And I guess the reality of sunflowers is, I mean, people aren't growing it fence post or fence line to fence line, and it's not like corn and soybeans or wheat that's already gobbled up tens of millions of acres. It wouldn't be hard to really push it a bit, would it?
No, the thing is, what with sunflowers, we're not a major crop, but given the rotation that you have in Manitoba and here in the Dakotas, it fits in really well with the rotation, and because we grow a diversity of crops, it's easy to switch crops in and out into your rotation. Whereas, example, if you were in like one of the I states like Illinois or Indiana or Iowa, they're basically soybeans and corn. Yeah. And then that's only two crops they grow. Well, here we're very diversified in the northern region here.
And how does seed supply look? Is there enough if people want to add a few acres?
Definitely. I was just in contact with the seed companies last week, and there's still plenty of seed available. So we were anticipating an increase in acres already, given where prices were at earlier this year. But with this, I'm certain that the industry would like to see every single seed planted. That would be our goal. If we had every bag in the ground this year that's available, that would be the best case scenario.
Yeah. And do you know, I mean, I guess what's funny is up here on this side of the border, I guess you had drought down there for a lot of North Dakota too, didn't you? But it was really profound up here, and I haven't really checked into yet how the sunflower supply is up here. A lot of the seed supplies are sort of short for a lot of our crops up here because of that drought. But I don't know about sunflowers. So I guess that's something to check around, because I guess it can't really just go across the border that easily, can it?
Actually, yes, it can. Most of the seed that is planted in Canada is from California.
Really? Okay, so it's not that's not an issue, eh?
No, see, sunflower is hybrid seed, and it's produced, in a region that it can't be contaminated, or not contaminated, but cross-pollinated with other crops. It has to be in an isolated area. And so the bulk of all planting seed that's produced in the world is in California.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
It has to be in an isolated place, and so that's why it's a great scenario there. So no, as long as there's planting seed available that will work in the climate in Canada, there's definitely seed available. So.
Well, okay, yeah, and these days, it's like totally dominated by oil seed sunflowers, right? On both, Yeah, I think up here too, right? Because I remember when I started working at this paper like decades ago, it was a mostly convex business, but I think it's totally changed in recent years. So it's not so different covering the two, but So,
no, and the thing is, you're close to the border, so it's not that far to haul to the crush plants or to bird food facilities. So we're in a good, like I said, Manitoba and North Dakota growers are in a very good position right now.
That was John Sandbakken of the U.S. National Sunflower Association. Well, we need to talk once more about country of origin labeling. And now I welcome Sean Pratt of the Western Producer to the program. So hello, Sean, and welcome to Between the Rows.
Hey, Ed. Thanks for inviting me here.
So traditionally, when I've been thinking of country of origin labeling, I think of the United States, and I think of what seems to us on this side of the border most of the time as dastardly attempts to try to find a way to sort of block Canadian pork or beef. But then Italy got into the act a few years ago with little attempts, it seemed, again, to our jaded eyes over here because we're affected by it, with durum imports to Italy. But now I understand from your story in our paper that, in fact, we're going to have to look much wider at the European Union when it comes to country of origin labeling these days.
That's right. They're contemplating legislation or a change to a regulation, I think they call it, that would... They've already got country of origin labeling in place, mandatory country of origin labeling on certain products. There's fruit and vegetables, beef and pork and eggs and, a variety of other products but they want to expand that list of products to include milk, tomatoes, potatoes, and certain other products. But the one that of real concern to Canadian farmers is they want to expand it to include durum on pasta labels. So they would say where the durum came from for this pasta package. So that's definitely a concern for Canadian farmers.
And how is this coming up? Like, why? My understanding was a couple of years ago, Italy was doing it, and various other European players were saying, "Oh, don't worry, we'll talk to the Italians about sort of unrolling some of this." And we just signed a free trade deal, apparently, with we did, and we were supposed to have better trade with the European Union. And now it looks like rather than it going to less country of origin labeling, it looks like it's going to more.
Yeah, it's all part of this European Commission's Farm to Fork strategy that was announced back, I think it was May 20th, 2020. They adopted this strategy, which is part of the European Green Deal. And in that strategy, they're stressing things like, a shift to more sustainability and environmentally friendly farming, and also they want transparency. And so this falls under that transparency category. I know I read a impact assessment on this proposal, and the proposal is broader than just. It's not just focused on country of origin labeling. It's a whole broader labeling initiative that is going to include, certain front of pack nutrition labeling and that type of stuff. But I guess one of the things they said in this impact assessment is that there's countries such as Italy that are adopting their own country of origin labeling laws, and they're worried that there isn't sort of uniform legislation so that everybody in the European Union has the same access to information about the products they're buying. And they feel that this sort of country by country approach is getting away from the whole idea of a single market in Europe. So they're proposing this sort of broader European Union-wide legislation, and it all harkens back to this farm to fork strategy that a lot of farmers around the world are nervous about.
And I know with the United States country of origin labeling, the various iterations of that we've dealt with, the concern there is that it's essentially operates as like a non-tariff trade barrier, in that it makes it more difficult for processors to take pigs and for farmers to raise pigs that might have been born in Canada, because you have to be kept segregated, processed separately, and then the products have to be labeled separately. So it adds a lot of headaches, which then would dissuade someone from wanting to import those products. Is that sort of the same concern that comes up with these European moves towards country of origin labeling?
That is exactly the same concern. I spoke to Jim Wickett, who's director of the Western Canadian Wheat Growers here in Canada, and he said this is just simply an expansion of non-tariff trade barriers, and it does have an impact. In Italy was Canada's top durum buyer, and in 2017, when they adopted that country of origin labeling, the Canadian durum sales to Italy plummeted. They went from a little over 1 million tons to 561,000 tons, so they slashed in half. And part of the reason is because the Italian farmers, farm groups, sort of had this smear campaign against Canadian durum, saying, it wasn't good for you. It's full of glyphosate and yada yada. So the consumers that hear this and then see the durum from this durum in this pasta came from Canada, it has an impact at the grocery store. So farmers here are quite concerned about this becoming a broader regulation. Italy isn't the only big customer of Canadian durum in the European Union. As I said, it used to be our top customer, and now it's our second biggest market. But there's also Belgium, which is Canada's fifth largest customer, and some others as well that kind of rank a little lower down the list.
Well, I'm sure it's something you'll be following, and I'm sure it's something we'll all have to be watching this as it unfolds.
Yeah, well, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I know that the Canadian Agri-Food Trade Alliance last year issued a statement saying that they weren't really pleased with how this Canadian-European Union free trade agreement was unfolding, and this is one of the very issues that they're most concerned about was Italy's country of origin labeling. They said it punishes Canadian exports, runs counter to the free trade agreement, and they say it's even against the EU law. Yet nothing's being done to resolve it. So they want some resolutions to this type of thing, and now here it is, sort of becoming a broader issue.
Well, thanks for explaining this to us today, Sean, and thanks for coming on the program.
Hey, no worries. Thanks, Ed.
Sean Pratt is a reporter with the Western Producer newspaper in Saskatoon. That's all for this week. Please join us again next week for another edition of Between the Rows. I'm Ed White, and I wish you all the best as spring quickly approaches.
We knew we were doing something right when our competition started swearing every time they talked about us. Just the other day, I heard someone saying, "Have you seen this f***ing Seedmaster Ultra Pro 2? They got third-party PAMI testing that confirms its individual row metering delivers uniform f***ing seed placement, near zero seed mortality, and no impact on f***ing germination results." We take it as a huge f***ing compliment. Start raising your f***ing ROI at seedmaster.ca.